If I told you SoFi Stadium basically turned into a chessboard overnight and someone slid a piece without saying a word, would that calm you down or make you feel even worse? Because that's the energy today. One quiet decision that could finally open up Justin Herbert's offense. One trench rumor that sounds meh until you picture what it does to the way this defense breathes. One draft path that looks safe on paper and still has real teeth. And one coordinator interview that could tell us what kind of edge this team is going to have when the game gets tight. Be honest, how many times this week have you grabbed your phone thinking, all right, this has to be the update that ends it? If you're strapped in for this ride with me, tap like, subscribe, and throw your take in the comments, because Bolt Fam is going to argue this one hard. Here's the first sign, and in the NFL this stuff matters. Sometimes what a coach doesn't do tells you more than what he does. Mike McDaniel was supposed to interview in Florida for the Bills' head coaching job on Friday, and it was expected to be in person. The weekend slate was loaded too. Anthony Lynn, Anthony Weaver, Grant Udinski, all scheduled to get their shot. And Buffalo even formally spoke to Phillip Rivers about their vacancy the day before. It felt like the whole league was spinning at once. Then Friday hits, and McDaniel doesn't show. He canceled the Bills interview, and the two sides never met. That was reported by Jordan Schultz and The Athletic's Diana Rossini. Sit with that for a second. Because after meeting with Buffalo earlier in the week, he also canceled an interview in Cleveland. When you see a guy backing out of doors in a row, it usually means he's narrowing his choices, not expanding them. Now the nerves aren't gone. Rossini also said McDaniel remains in the mix for the Raiders' head coaching vacancy. Yeah, the one spot you absolutely do not want this story to end. That's still sitting out there like a shadow. But if you're looking for anything that feels like momentum in our direction, McDaniel pulling out of the Bills interview has to count as a positive. The Chargers aren't completely out of the woods yet, but the arrow tilted a little. And what's almost louder than the news itself is what the Chargers haven't done. Even with McDaniel still considering head coaching openings, Los Angeles hasn't reopened the offensive coordinator interview process. I get why that makes people uneasy, like, why aren't we hedging? But it can also read like confidence, like the building believes this ends with McDaniel calling plays for Herbert, and they're not blinking. The timing is messy because this coaching cycle is chaos. 10 teams will have replaced head coaches by the time this stage of the offseason wraps. That kind of supply and demand circus stretches timelines, shifts leverage, and delays those pen-to-paper moments everyone's waiting on. And it's not like the front office is frozen. While the McDaniel saga keeps dragging, the Chargers don't have an offensive or defensive coordinator under contract right now. And the defensive side had to pivot fast after Jesse Minter took the Ravens head coaching job. They've been interviewing for the DC opening, Ravens DC Zach Orr, Titans DC Denard Wilson, and they've also requested to interview Rams defensive passing game coordinator and assistant head coach Aubrey Pleasant. So yes, there's movement. They're trying to keep the foundation from cracking while the offensive plan is still hovering right at the finish line. And if McDaniel does land here the way it's been trending, the effect is obvious. Herbert gets structure. He gets rhythm. You get answers on third and long that don't feel like you're asking the football gods for a favor. You get red zone ideas that aren't just somebody win your rep. You get chunk plays that are designed, not begged for. But until it's final, the tension sticks around. And speaking of tension, what's floating around today in the trenches could shift the entire personality of this defense without ever lighting up a highlight reel. Because while everyone's staring at coordinators, there's talk about a veteran, big-body interior defensive lineman being on the Chargers' radar this offseason. Dalvin Tomlinson, currently with the Cardinals. And before you roll your eyes, let me say this. This is exactly the type of move that looks quiet on the timeline and loud on Sundays. The need inside is not subtle. The Chargers looked vulnerable when the front couldn't hold firm in the middle. When the A-gaps soften up, everything downstream turns into a chain reaction. Linebackers get swallowed. The backfield gets pushed around. Edge rushers lose clean angles because they're trying to fix what's happening inside. It stops being run defense and starts being the entire structure of your unit getting stressed snap after snap. Tomlinson is a fix-the-structure kind of player. Not about flashy box score nights. It's about anchoring, eating space, and forcing backs to bounce into where help actually lives. He's the guy who lets the pass rush play faster and freer because the offense can't just live between the tackles and stay on schedule. Early down run anchor. Clean fit in a rotation with a more aggressive pass rushing defensive tackle. stabilizer against those power runs that want to go straight downhill and make you tap out. But this rumor only grows if the value opens up. Money is the wall. If it's full price, it's a luxury. Simple as that. This gets real if Arizona starts thinking cap flexibility and you're looking at a renegotiation, a release, or a low-cost trade scenario. And don't ignore the competition part. Any contender that needs interior help could jump in and offer more. That's why the trigger points matter here. Any hint the Cardinals consider restructuring or moving on, any Chargers messaging that interior toughness is a priority, and any early contact or visits with veteran defensive line options once the market opens. Now come with me to the other trench, because as much as the defense needs a stronger spine, there's one topic that had Chargers fans saying the same thing all season. One issue that felt like it was sabotaging this team possession by possession: interior offensive line. No matter how you feel about the year, everybody watched the same movie. Herbert dealing with trouble up the middle, plays collapsing before they could even breathe, third down situations turning into chaos because the pocket wouldn't hold. The outcry wasn't just noise, it had weight. It got so bad it cost offensive line coach Mike Devlin his job. That tells you the organization isn't pretending this is a small tweak. They know it has to be addressed. Free agency can help, sure, but the 2026 NFL Draft is also being framed as a real path to fix that glaring issue. And one name keeps popping up in mock drafts tied to the Chargers: Oregon guard Emmanuel Pregnon. And the Oregon pipeline angle isn't imaginary. Look across this roster: Justin Herbert, Troy Dye, Nico Reed, Jamari Caldwell. That Ducks connection is real familiarity, real comfort with what that program produces. Even running back Royce Freeman had a brief stint on the practice squad. So when you see another Oregon name linked to LA, it doesn't feel random. It feels like a pattern the team already trusts. Pregnon's measurables jump off the page: 6'5", 318 pounds, big frame, legit NFL guard build. But what makes people lean forward are the efficiency numbers. According to Pro Football Focus, he didn't allow a single sack, only allowed one hit, and just 3 pressures. That's the kind of clean interior play the Chargers have been pleading for, because it doesn't just help the line, it changes how Herbert has to operate. It changes how quickly you can get into your drop. It changes what you can call in the red zone without immediately bracing for collapse. And it's not like this is some fringe idea. ESPN's Mel Kiper has Pregnon ranked as the number 3 interior offensive lineman in the draft, behind Penn State's Olivavega-Ioane and Auburn's Connor Lew. So if the Chargers decide they're going guard and those 2 names are gone, Pregnon becomes the kind of value pick you can talk yourself into fast, because the need matches the profile. But this is also where the debate lights up. Drafting a guard isn't glamorous. It doesn't win the internet for a day. And some fans will always want the shiny skill position headline. Yet building the wall in front of your franchise quarterback is how you stop living on the edge every Sunday. Herbert protected is Herbert in control. Herbert in control is an offense with chemistry, pacing, and answers. Think about that for a second. Now the last piece today swings back to leadership. Because while the offense is still trying to lock in its next voice, the defense is actively interviewing the guy who might be calling the shots next season. The Chargers announced they completed an interview with former Titans DC Denard Wilson for their defensive coordinator job on Friday. And that matters because the team is clearly casting a wide net after losing Jesse Minter. They've also interviewed Zach Orr, and Aubrey Pleasant is in the conversation as well. Different backgrounds, different strengths, but all connected to modern defensive coaching lanes. Denard Wilson is a really interesting evaluation because Tennessee's defense wasn't exactly living in ideal conditions. He did a decent job the last couple of seasons, despite not operating with a full deck most of the time. He's also interviewed with the Commanders, so this isn't a one-team situation. His path is detailed. He started as a pro scout with the Bears, then moved into coaching with the Rams as a defensive quality control coach back in 2012, worked his way up to defensive backs coach, then took the same job with the Jets in 2017. From there, he went to the Eagles as passing game coordinator / DBs coach in 2019, then joined the Ravens in a similar role. In 2024, he became the Titans defensive coordinator and stayed there the last 2 seasons. And yeah, the 2025 rankings weren't pretty on paper. Tennessee finished number 28 in scoring defense and number 21 in total defense, including number 15 against the run and number 21 against the pass. So the real question is what that becomes with the Chargers personnel, in the AFC West with a team trying to make a real playoff run. Does Wilson bring stability and sharper adjustments? Can he elevate the pass rush and tighten third down defense? Can he get the locker room believing early? That's why this offseason feels like a crossroads. A McDaniel update that leans toward relief, but still leaves one rival-shaped threat hanging. A Dalvin Tomlinson rumor that's all about value and getting tougher inside. A draft path that could finally stop the interior from betraying Herbert. And a DC search that's going to define the defensive identity, not just the playbook. So I'll ask you straight, do you trust where this is headed? If you were running the board, which of these moves, or potential moves, do you prioritize first? Drop your answer in the comments, because I want to see Bolt Fam go back and forth on it. And if you're locked in with me through this whole ride, hit like, subscribe, and stick around, because the next update could flip the whole board again.